What is going on, everybody, and welcome back once again. My name is Jordan, also known as JMonster. I want to thank you guys for joining me for a .95 battle replay. Yes, the day has finally arrived. You can all now enjoy the new patch that we worked so hard to bring you. So today I've got a 3 versus 3 on one of the new maps in the patch. This is the Old Forest Roads. Without any further ado, let's get into the army comps and then into the replay itself. I hope you guys enjoy it. The first army we're going to look at today is the forces of the Kingdom of Umbar, being commanded by yours truly. And I've brought 2 units of mercenary cavalry who are a very cost-effective counter to a lot of the lancers in the game. And the lancers are definitely the most numerous cavalry around. So these guys can punch well above their price range, but they will not win every fight against every lancer unit. So do not expect them to carry the day all the time, especially unsupported, but they definitely trade very, very well with a lot of the more common cav units in the game. Over here I got a unit, I believe 3 units in total, of Castamir's Chosen, who have been given a facelift by the Cowering Coma, one of our developers, and he's really brought their Numenorean heritage to the forefront, and I think they look amazing. And in terms of their strength, they are very akin to a unit like the Imladra Stormguard, for example. They have a lot of melee defense, a little bit less armor than I think you'd expect for a unit that appears to be as well armored, and that's because Umbar does get a armor penalty from their faction bonuses. However, they are locked morale, so you guys can expect the Castamir's Chosen to hold the line to the death. They cannot be routed. They will fight hard and unrelentingly for their commanders. Over here I got a unit of Abrazani Nardutari. I believe I have a second one around here as well, which is an AP unit, and it seems like there's a little bit of confusion surrounding what exactly AP is, so I'll explain it to you briefly. AP, for the purposes of dealing damage, halves the armor value of whatever unit that they attack. Now, AP units in .95 tend to have a little bit lower attack, unless they are two-handed axe units. So units that have very high melee defense, enough to outstrip their attack, do much better against armor-piercing units than units that rely more heavily on their armor save, obviously. So, for example, Dol Amroth they have middling kind of melee defense, but they really rely on their armor, and so do the dwarves and things like that. So armor-piercing units are very effective against factions like that. Moving on over here, I got 4 units of the Belgier Footmen, who have also been given a facelift. I think the entire Umbar faction roster, for the most part, has been redone. And, of course, they're here to give me a little bit of an anti-cavalry edge. Over on this side, I got some Abrazani Nardu Bawib. And, by the way, these are, for the Nardu Tariq and the Nardu Bawib, these are the upgraded models. The unupgraded ones have, like a, it's like a, what would you call it, like a blazoned Gambazon or something like that, that has the symbol of Umbar on it. But these guys are plate armored, very, very good at standing up in a ranged fight. They've got about 6 not armor value. They've got 6 shield value in addition to their armor value. So I think that's probably the highest shield value in the game. So they stand up really well to arrows, but they don't do a ton of damage. They have middling damage in return. So yeah, definitely want to use them as a kind of a unit to outlast your enemy skirmish units rather than destroy them outright. Over here I got a couple units of Belgier Halberds who actually have their armor upgrades, so they've got that kind of like Lorica, like very Roman look, like a Lorica Armada and things like that, and they've got, I believe, 5 armor in total when upgraded, so they're definitely very resilient, and of course they are AP with their 9 damage, so a very, very useful unit for supporting my front line, which is exactly what I'm going to be doing in this battle. Over here, another unit of Abrazani Nardu Tariq, and then we get into the really beefy cavalry units. Got a unit of Mounted Numenorean Shield Guard, who have been given a custom skin for Umbar, as I'm sure you have noticed, and it is glorious. They look great. They are a Lancer unit, of course, so they get a -3 penalty against other cavalry units, but against infantry, Lancers are very, very king. And I will explain Lancers and cavalry and unit types in a lot more detail when I release my survival guide for patch .95, but over here I have another unit of Mercenary Cavalry. And finally, where are they? Yes, here they are. I have the Warlords of Umbar, who look amazing. They are very Numenorean looking, which I think is befitting the ruling caste of the Numenoreans in exile in Umbar. And over here, the general unit, there are actually 2 of them. One has a mask, and this one has a helmet more akin to, I think, Elendil from the movie. And yeah, they look absolutely amazing. I think they're inspired both in in choice of color and by the look of the unit by Ar-Pharazôn the Golden, the last king of Numenor before it was sunk beneath the waves. But in any case, let's move on now to my ally. We have the forces of Rohan, which I know is a big fan favorite, being commanded by Rules. And a lot of his army is hidden, so I'm going to be going off memory for the most part. He's got a unit of Sons of Eorl, who are a knight unit with, I think, higher than average anti-cavalry bonus, but they do have less armor. So it is much more feasible to shoot these guys to death than, say, a unit like the Knights of Numinas or Variat Cataphracts, for example. But they do a little bit better against cavalry, which I think is fairly appropriate for a unit like Rohan. Moving on over here, we have some Riddermark cavalry. For the most part, his force is cavalry, actually, so we've got a very strong cavalry support army. I think he's got 2 units of Riddermark cavalry, who are lancers, 1 unit of the 1st Marshal's bodyguard. There's also some yet more Riddermark cavalry. He's also got a couple units of the Air Raid of Aldburg, who were previously the Royal Guard. He's also got some, yeah, here they are, the Air Raid of Aldburg. He's got a couple units of Eastmark Horse Archers, a couple units of Riders of the Fold, I think, are hiding in here as well, and a couple units of Riddermark Skirmishers as well, which are a Javelin unit. And last, but certainly not least, I believe he's got 2 units of Riddermark Spears and a couple units of Shield Maidens hiding in the brush somewhere. Let's move on now to the 3rd and final blue team army. We have the forces of Cardolan, being commanded by Fluffy Duck, or Remorius Fluffy Duck, whichever you prefer. He's brought a unit of the Tharbad Riders, who are deadly on the charge. They are... You know, Cardolan has fairly limited cavalry options, but I think you guys are going to see these guys a lot, because they have the Uber tier charge bonus. They've got 8 damage initially, and they've also got another 20 that stacks on top of that. So it's very deadly AP charge, but they do not have HP, like a lot of the units that have that, like the Knights, for example. So it is possible to kill these guys with melee cavalry, for example, like the Mercenary Cavalry will do very well against the Tharbad Riders, assuming the Tharbad Riders are denied their charge, which is obviously something you want to try and do with your melee cav. But over here, he's got, I believe, 3 units of the Minas Garithlin Swordsmen, 1 unit of Tharbad Warhammers, 1 unit of Dunedain Captains, who are an essential part of the Cardolan roster. Units like the Dunedain Captains, or the one in front of them over here, the Minotaur Roman Guardians. We'll talk about it in a little bit more detail later. They inspire units around them, and Cardolan's morale is quite low. It is definitely below average for I want to say a Manish faction. Not really. There's not really, like, that's not how the morale tiers work, but definitely below average for units of their training. And the Dunedain Captains and the Minotaur Roman Guardians are an essential part of keeping them around, since they inspire units around them to greater feats of courage. Moving on now, I've got a couple units of the Minas Garithlin Sharpshooters, who are an amazing unit. They are a hybrid, so they've got a decent shield value, I believe about 4, but they also have maces in close quarters, so they are AP at range and in melee, so they make excellent supporting infantry, although with their lower shield value and their lower melee defense values, since they have a mace, which gives them a -1 penalty, they are not suitable for frontline combat. You want to use these guys in a support role in all cases, essentially. In the back here, we got, I believe, 2 or 3 units of the Greenwatch Garrison Footmen, who are a cheap... I wouldn't even say they're militia tier pike. I'd say they're like a mid-ish range pike, like lower mid-range pike that don't have a ton of armor, so they need to be supported. Of course, mixed in with some shielded units. Over here, we have the Wardens of Tirn Gothrad, which I love the look of these guys. They've got the Numinos Knight look to them, mixed in with some of the traditional Arnor/Arthedain armor, and they got those very distinctive red plumage and the capes as well. And these guys inspire as well. So a lot of inspiration units here. They're going to help Fluffy Duck anchor his line. Over here we have some Minas Garithlin Spearmen. I think he's got 1 unit of the Garithlin Spearmen, and another unit there of the Minas Garithlin Swordsmen. In the back we've got some Dunedain Commanders. Again, these guys inspire, and they are, in their own right, they are a pretty decent mid-tier Lancer unit. Probably akin to the Serpent Guard, though I think they have a little bit better melee defense and some more attack. Over here we have the Hearthguard of Amonsul, who are probably one of the most versatile and tankiest archer bodyguards in the game. They've got plate armor, they've got really nice shield values, and of course, being a spear bodyguard, they have a higher than average anti-cavalry bonus. So these guys are deadly at range and against cavalry. Definitely a very useful and versatile unit for the Cardolan roster. Now, I believe he's also got some hidden units as well. A unit of Thieves of Tharbad hanging around somewhere in here, and a unit of Dunedain Rangers as well. And I think that just about does it for the blue team's armor, so let's go ahead and let's see what our opponents are bringing to the battle today. Across the field from Poke Fluffy Duck, we have the forces of Harad being commanded by one of our developers, that being WK. And he's brought quite an extensive lineup of light infantry and a ton of cavalry. He's got, I believe, 3 units of the Southron Warband, who are one of the very few AP spear picks in the game. He's also got 3 units, I believe, of the Southron Pikes to back them up. In addition to which, he's got a ton of his cav, as I said, 2 units here of the Southron Lancers, who I don't think they're AP in close quarters, like the Southron units would kind of suggest by like their trend, basically. But they are a decent medium Lancer pick, and now we get into the real cream of his infantry. It's got a lot of Trollmen here, I believe 2 units of Trollmen, 1 unit of the Demons of the Desert, and 1 unit of the Champions of Nafarag. Let's get a nice little look at them, all of which are AP. He's also brought 1 unit of Black Serpent Bodyguard. I think I mentioned the 2 units of Serpent Guard, just regular old Serpent Guard. And he's also got, now you can't see them because they're hidden, but over on the other end of the river, he's got, I believe, 1 unit of Hashari and 2 units of Hashari Stalkers, who are the Archer Ranger variant. And a little bit of a note on Rangers, actually, since there's a few of them in this battle. They are a little bit lower. They've got about average damage. They're meant to be used against lightly armored or unshielded foes, but they have true body-piercing projectiles now that Kuro has made one specifically for this class of unit. So they can damage multiple units in a single arrow, making them extremely deadly against densely packed formations of lightly armored infantry, and actually it's not bad against lightly armored cavalry as well. But I think that does it for WK's army, so let's move on now to his ally, who is commanding the Kingdom of Rhun. This is Revan of Korriban. He's got 1 unit of Camel's Dragon Knights, which I believe is where his General's Bodyguard is going to be hanging out. He's got 2 units of the Variag Mercenary Riders, 2 units of Lok Inas Rim as well, the Heavy Cataphracts. He's also got 1 unit of Eastron Warriors, I believe 3 units, the full contingent of Lok Flag Rim, a couple units of Gamp Rim. He's also got a lot of light infantry as well, a couple units of Variag Mercenaries, 1 or 2 units, I believe, of the Loknar Rim, and I think he's got some more hidden units in here in the form of the Eastron Guard, formerly known as the Clan Guard, the halberd-wielding maniacs who are still very good against Cav, and, of course, still AP. So not a bad supporting pick. Of course, you want to be careful with how you use them because they can die real fast. And finally, he's got a unit of Eastron Crossbowmen, which is quite nicely hidden here in the woods. These guys can do a ton of work. They are quite vulnerable, though, with their low range and their low armor as well. But I think that does it for the Rhun army, so let's move on now to his enigmatic ally, who is very much hidden up here on the hill, that being the forces of Arthedain, being commanded by Brainy Smurf. Now, most of his army is, of course, hidden, and I'm just going to go off of what I remember here. He's got, I believe, 4 units of Arthedain Pikemen, 1 unit of the Anuminas Gate Guards, 2 units of Dunedain Scouts, which are mounted bowmen, 2 units of the mounted Arthedain Sergeants with armor upgrades. He's also got 4 units of Arthedain Men-at-Arms, so I believe are upgraded to the max, so they have the full plate armor. And he's also got, let's see, 2 units of Arthedain Marksmen, who are upgraded, 2 units of Evendim Archers, Marksmen? Evendim Archers, I believe is what they're called. And I think that's it. No, he's got a unit of the Royal Court of House Amlaith? Royal Court of House Amlaith, that's right. Now, just a cool little note here. They're basically to represent the royal courts of the respective kingdoms that ruled over them during their time in, I believe, the Second Age. So that's kind of cool. No, I guess it's more of the Third Age. It would be like earlier Third Age when Arnor fell. So the Royal Court of House Amlaith ruled over Arthedain, and the Royal Court of House Thorondor ruled over the Kingdom of Cardolan. So a cool little lore bit there for you guys. But I think that's it for Arthedain as well. So let's go ahead and let's jump into the replay. I hope you guys enjoy it. As the battle begins, the men of the south and east are going to speed their way across the forest towards the lines of my allies, Rohan being hidden. They're not going to take the brunt of this. It is going to be Cardolan, and it's going to be down to Fluffy Duck here to weather this gigantic storm that's going to be heading his way pretty shortly. But let's pop over to my end. Just a little note here is that my forces are actually going to be kind of sitting over here to check the advance of the Arthedain player, who is going to take his time in joining the fight. But yeah, we'll rejoin this side of the battle once things really begin to kick off. But as the Easterlings move forward, Rohan, of course, is going to spring into action, Riders of the Fold, and some Eastmark Horse Archers, and I think there's some Lancers possibly in there as well, going to move forward and just harass the advance of the Easterlings as they move towards their ally, the Harad Rim, to to try and lend them a little bit of support. You can see Easterling troops just coming out of the woodwork here. A couple units of Clan Guard revealing themselves, along with some of the Variag mercenaries, and they are slowly but surely making their way towards their ally here. But it looks like there's a little bit of trouble in the woods here. The South Rhun Lancers charging their way headlong into the Rohirrim Horse Archers. That is not going to be fun for either one of these forces. Those very lightly armored South Rhun Lancers really taking a beating there, but once they close into close quarters, they should do relatively well against the Horse Archers. But still, the Haradrim advance being very much broken here by the timely intervention of Rohan. Over here, however, in the force, you can see the real heavy hitters being brought front and center. Got a unit of Serpent Guard here, and I believe the other one is not too far behind. And at the same time, the rest of the Haradrim infantry is now moved forward to engage the lines of Cardolan, which they have in fact already done. South Rhun Warband here holding the line long enough for the South Rhun Pikes to get themselves into position to begin supporting them. Now, all of these South Rhun units are AP, something to keep in mind, that they can do very well against these very heavily armored forces from Cardolan. However, the Haradrim really seem to have been caught a little bit at unawares, their line not being completely formed, and the South Rhun Pikes, of course, lagging a little bit behind, not able to move in as quickly as they wanted to help the South Rhun Warband before they were very much depleted by the forces of Cardolan. Now that the rest of the South Rhun infantry, however, has arrived, especially these trollmen, things may start to turn around for the heavily armored forces of Cardolan, although they do have their sharpshooters in the back here in a great position to put fire basically wherever they want to into the South Rhun line. Looks like they've chosen these pikemen as their first victim, and that's going to be real ugly for the pikemen. However, once those pikes manage to connect with the Minas Tirith swordsmen, they're going to do a lot of damage, so really Cardolan needs to focus these guys down as quickly as possible, and it seems like they are being given a lot of his attention so far. Oh no, never mind. Cardolan has now switched his attention to the Demons of the Desert. A very good idea. These guys are deadly with their javelins, and because of their special Trollman javelins, they can disrupt formations very well, which may potentially allow the South Rhuns to burst through the lines. But it doesn't look like they're going to have the opportunity. They're just being cut to pieces here by focus fire from all three of the crossbow companies. Looks like we got some Serpent Guard. Don't know how they managed to get into the back here. Big charge being mounted into the front of the Tharbad Warhammers. Gonna do a decent amount of damage. Looks like they've been going at the Tharbad Warhammers for quite a while, but the Tharbad Cavalry, the mounted contingent of Tharbad warriors, going to come in, see those Serpent Guard off. And it looks like WK still has a card to play. You can see some of the Hashari Stalkers here putting some flanking fire into the forces of Cardolan. So things are looking relatively even between the two forces now that the South Rhun reinforcements have arrived. Over here, however, we have Rohan stalking about in the back lines, and it looks like the Easterlings trying to bully them out of position, trying to keep the back of their ally, the South Rhuns, safe for as long as possible. WK going to pull out some of his troops here. And I think I've actually also committed a unit to the fray. My Warlords of Umbar coming in to try and help out my allies, and they're going to be beelining straight for the flank of the Haradrim forces. Want to crush those Trollmen, especially the Trollmen, and yeah, try and free up a little bit of my allies' resources for use against the Easterlings once they arrive. Nice charge there into the flank of the Trollmen and into the Pikemen. Going to need to hightail it out of there, however, losing one of my Warlords of Umbar in the process. And it looks like finally Arthedain is moving towards my lines, but I believe he's going to hold position down here in the Dell. Now, there's a couple of reasons why the player might be doing this, why Brady Smith might decide to take this more passive approach. The battle between his allies and mine is kind of hanging in the balance at the moment, so moving in with his forces this close to my lines does kind of keep me occupied, in the sense that I can't commit fully to helping my allies with the ever-present threat of the Arthedain army on our right wing, which is not something that we want to have exposed to these very powerful Arthedain units. And as well, yeah, he's not really sure what's going to happen with the what the outcome is going to be of the battle between his allies and mine. But let's pop back over to the real fun part here. We can see the Easterlings have arrived on the scene, and slowly but surely they're making their way with their infantry as well to the front lines. And the South Rhun infantry has managed to break through the Cardolan lines, slaughtering the Dunedain captains in the process and scattering the Cardolan infantry. However, the victorious forces here under the Wardens of Tirn Gothrad on the Cardolan right are going to try and stem the tide and hold these champions of Nafrat in place, because they are in a great position to be peppered down essentially by the Cardolan skirmishing forces. Still got a lot of Minas Tirith sharpshooters who have very wisely been repositioned, and also the Hearthguard here of Almansul and the Minotaur Roman Guardians as well. Going to be able to basically surround these guys with missiles and pepper them down. This is a big loss for Harad. Speaking of losses, there goes his general, I believe, to some cavalry from Rohan. Wow, totally spaced on their name there. Charge here from the air raid of Aldburg, into the Champions of Nafarat, just trying to whittle down these Haradrim forces. But WK going to bring in these fear-causing units from the rear. Might be enough here to cause a massive break in the Cardolan lines, and they're being squeezed on the other end by some Trollmen of Harad. A very chaotic battle here in the forest. Horse archers, however, from Rohan have arrived to try and lend support to the flagging Cardolan line. And now that the forces of WK have actually broken through the lines of Cardolan, they're going to find themselves extremely exposed to all of this skirmish fire. And indeed, we're seeing some breaking here from the South Ron forces. But luckily, there are the Easterlings here ready to pick up the torch and charge towards the Cardolan lines. Now, Cardolan's in a lot of trouble right now, and there's really not a lot of support that is able to be lent to them, although I think I have sent some of my forces over this way, or I will be shortly. I'll be sending a couple units of my infantry. I believe I've got a couple units of infantry in the back. Yeah, the Abrazadim Nadu Tariq and the Abrazadim Nadu Bawib going to be moving forward towards the lines of my allies, trying to lend them a little bit of aid. But over here, Arthedain mounting a very bold but perhaps ill-advised frontal charge on my Umbarium lines. They are being cut down with arrows from every side, and they're going to be charging headlong into my Chosen of Castamere, who are backed up with some halberds, and you can see that that is not going great for them right now. There's some halberds there in the front lines, going to skewer those guys. He does manage to do a decent amount of damage to my Castamere's Chosen. I think they lose about 2 or so, maybe 2 or 3 men there, but they are still very elite, so it is a loss. But nonetheless, his Arthedain sergeants are going to be driven back quite handily there by my combined arms approach. And that's going to be all the action I think we see on Arthedain's side for quite some time. So let's pop back over to the real action now forming between the forces of the Easterlings and Rohan. Rohan doing their best here to support their ally. They've managed to catch out a unit of Variag mercenary riders, but there are some Loki and Esrim moving in to try and support them against those Riddermark cavalry. And just in terms of pound for pound, the stats here between the Loki and Esrim and the Riddermark cavalry, the Easterlings definitely have the advantage. You can see that the Riddermark cavalry are suffering some pretty heavy losses, and it won't be long before they are driven back. Now in the back here, it looks like some of the Cardolan forces managing to hold their ground, but the Easterlings have very swiftly surrounded them. They're going to begin to hack them to bits. The Cardolan elite forces, some of these Minas Tirith swordsmen looking like they've come back from routing, trying to rally over here. The Wardens of Tyr and Gothrad trying to hold down the center, but it's only going to be a matter of time before the Lokgamp Rim manage to batter their way through this beleaguered Cardolan line. You got some breaking over here on Cardolan's left wing, and it's only going to be a matter of time before the Hashari, who have now been committed to the fight by Harad, are able to break their way through. Over here, though, we have a small glimmer of hope for Cardolan in the form of the Sons of Eorl. These guys still very healthy and extremely deadly, and most of the runic cavalry is busy elsewhere, and that does leave this wing open to the tender mercies of those deadly knight units. Over on this end, you can see the Loki and Esrim having a lot of success against the Riddermark cavalry. They've now lost about half the unit. It's going to definitely going to require a little bit of aid here on the part of my Umbar forces, and I believe I've got some of my cavalry over here. Let's see. Oh, some of the Southern Lancers looks like they ran into the stakes there. Very unfortunate for WK. But I believe I've got some cavalry over here, and I was about to send them to the aid of my ally, but I realized that these mercenary cavalry definitely had a good engagement here against the Arthedain sergeants, so I'm going to be sending my general instead. Over here you can see, well, you can see them somewhere. I'm sure I can hear them. Yeah, here we go. The March of the Warlords of Umbar steadily towards my allies' lines, trying to lend a little bit of support to my allies, who are really struggling right now. The Loki and Esrim have now broken through the Rohirrim cavalry, and they're going to be looking like they're mounting a rear charge here against the Riddermark cav, pushing deep behind enemy lines. And if they can get into some of the Eastmark horse archers and things like that, then they're going to have a real good time indeed. Hashari here outflanking what remains of Cardolan. Even the Wardens of Tyr and Gothrad are considering routing, and if they go, everyone else is definitely going to follow them. Let's go ahead and kick it into full speed here. Wardens of Tyr and Gothrad holding down the line. Those Minas Tirith swords going to break almost immediately upon contact with the Hashari. Can see some more breaking here. The Green Watch Garrison Footmen not able to hold the line. Even the Tharbad Warhammers are beginning to lose hope. On the forces of Cardolan, their infantry are thoroughly overrun by some excellent teamwork here on the part of the Easterlings and the Southrons. WK doesn't have too much of an army left, but he does have enough to really make a difference here in the support of the Easterlings. We hear Variag Mercenary Riders charging into the rear of the air raid of Alberg. Might see this Lancer unit begin to rout in the face of these overwhelming odds, and they are indeed wavering. It looks like my general unit has finally joined the fray, and I think they actually charged hard into a unit of Locainus from Cataphracts. Unfortunately, we missed that, but they did manage to make a difference here, getting to the fight just in the nick of time. That's going to free up a lot of the Rohirrim cavalry to move in against the Eastron Guard. However, the Eastron Guard, they are halberds. They are AP, and they have a nice cavalry bonus. I believe 8 and 8 cavalry bonus, an 8 spear bonus, and like +4 versus cavalry. So the air raid Alberg and the First Marshal's Bodyguard really need to tread lightly around a unit like this. Looks like we've got some Dunedain commanders coming in as well to support the First Marshal's Bodyguard. And that is going to be enough there with a little bit of support from my Warlords of Umbar to rout the Eastrons, and they're going to flee off the battlefield. Now, our forces are in hot pursuit by the Variag Mercenary Riders, but honestly, if they want to pick a fight with my Warlords of Umbar, they're going to have a bad time. However, they are backed up by some Campbell's Dragon Knights, and that is not a fight that I want to leave my Warlords of Umbar in for any extended period of time. So I'm going to pull them out of there as quickly as possible, try and preserve their numbers. This is a very important unit. I know I'm going to need it to fight Arthedain a little bit later on in the battle. So I'm going to be forced to fall back here, and that is going to allow the Easterlings to push forward. But this is actually, we were on voice, and we wanted the Camel's Dragon Knights to chase us. We wanted them to chase us far behind the enemy line so that we can isolate them, surround them, and sweep this very important Cataphract unit from the field. Because this is a unit that is strong enough and still healthy enough to swing the battle in the favor of the Easterlings. And now the Camel's Dragon Knight's going to give up chasing eventually. Big charge here from the Dunedain Commanders and the Tharbad Riders. I'm going to come in from the rear now with my Warlords of Umbar, and we're going to sweep these guys away. Beautiful charge into the rear of those Dragon Knights. They're going to find themselves assaulted on all sides. Nice charge there from the Rohan air raid of Alberg. We're going to join the fray as well, and those Dragon Knights are going to be swiftly overwhelmed in the face of some very excellent teamwork on the part of my allies. Yeah, no, most of those Dragon Knights have been cut down. There's actually some Javelins, I believe, some Rittermark skirmishers taking care of the rest of them, and they have effectively been neutralized, which is going to allow us to move on to other things with our cavalry assets. So I'm going to be moving forward here with my Warlords of Umbar, looking to pick a fight with these Lokeflag Grim. Now, Rul's going to charge in. I'm going to charge in right after him. We're going to sandwich those two, or that Lokeflag Grim unit between our two cavalry units, and deal a fair amount of damage to them. We're just trying to lower the amount of Easterling infantry still left on the field, because we have next to no infantry over on this end of the battle. So that is the fight that we are desperately trying to win at this point, and the Easterlings are trying to press their advantage home, managing to rout a unit here of the Minotaur Roman Guardians. Not great for Cardolan. Thieves of Tharbad, having taken some fairly heavy losses, going to fall back in the face of the advance of the Lokeflag Grim. The Minas Carithalan Sharpshooters, unfortunately, looking like they're going to get caught up there. Cardolan going to try and move them out of the range of the Lokeflag Grim, and at the last moment they are going to start to run, and they are going to manage to disengage themselves fairly handily after taking probably about a dozen or so casualties. Over here, our Lancer units are really going to work against the Lokeflag Grim, but the Southron pikemen have actually reformed, and they are now moving in support of the Flag Grim, so Rul's going to have to pull his First Marshal's Bodyguard out of there as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, all the remains of the Cardolan skirmish forces are trying to lay down a little bit of covering fire here to allow the rest of their forces to safely disengage. Meanwhile, the Easterlings charging hard forward here, very much blobbed up though. They are quite vulnerable to being surrounded, and they are definitely being pelted hard by the forces of the skirmish forces of Cardolan, who are still very much intact at this late point in the battle. And you can see the Easterlings really struggling here. The Haradrim blowing their horn, somebody's blowing their horn, I believe that's the Easterlings, trying to rally their forces, prevent them from routing. Charge from the rear now by the Tharbad Riders. Going to be enough to, I think, rout maybe one of those units of Gamperim. I think they're going for the Gamperim, but they are going to get peppered down by, I think there's some archers still across the field. Yes, indeed, the Hashari Stalkers and another unit of Hashari as well. Still on this side of the field, still able to be a strong support presence. Hashari here getting charged down by the Riders of the Fold. they leave themselves in close combat with those assassins for too long, the Ashari are going to devastate those cavalry. What do we got over here? Thieves of Tharbad, along with the Minas Garitlan sharpshooters, picking a fight with the Lokflag Rim. That is a fight that they are going to win. There's a lot of AP still left here. Over in this sense, some of the Eastron Guard weren't completely defeated, and they have now rallied and are charging headlong towards the Dunedain archers, trying to cut off the retreat of these Minas Garitlan sharpshooters. Over here, these light infantry is now numerous enough and with enough damage to really punch a hole in the remaining Lokflag Rim, and I don't think the Flag Rim are going to be able to pull that one back, especially not with the support that we're seeing coming in from Rohan. Another big charge here from the remaining air raid of Umbar, charging into the flank of the Flag Rim, but it looks like there's a little bit of support here. Got the Variag mercenaries in the back, some Dunedain scouts as well. Arthedain has finally arrived on the field, and Rohan is going to do his best to try and stymie the advance here of the Runic skirmish forces, who again still intact. And they, as we've seen on the side of Cardolan, if your skirmish forces are left unchecked, they can really do a lot of work and swing the tide of the battle in your favor. So a big charge there from the Riddermark skirmishers, trying to prevent that kind of eventuality. And the Loknar Rim are going to suffer quite heavily at the hands of the Riddermark cavalry. Looks like we got some Eastron crossbowmen over here as well. That's a pretty big deal. Arthedain sergeants moving in as well to try and support their allies against the Rohirrim skirmishers, and it looks like a charge there from the sergeants is going to be enough to send these guys into shaken. And it looks like they might get routed if they are surrounded here. Now, looks like Rules is going to be able to very quickly disengage, but oh man, that is brutal. He pulled back too far, got himself caught on those stakes, and that's going to be the end of those Riddermark skirmishers there. And now Arthedain has arrived on the field, and perhaps we're going to see things turn around a little bit here. Some charges, some opportunistic charges from those Lancers could be enough to deal with the remaining forces here of my allies on this end of the battlefield. And I think I finally brought over a little bit of infantry support. Since the Arthedain forces are still kind of just sitting around, I brought in some of my melee cavalry and a couple units of my Abrazanim Nadu Tariq and a unit of heavy archers as well to try and assist my allies here against the Arthedain forces. And it looks like Arthedain might finally be moving forward as well at the same time that he is lending support to the other end of the field, although this does strip away most of his cavalry support. He has lost a fair amount of it in a frontal charge on my lines, and also I believe in that small skirmish over on this end somewhere in the forest, he lost another unit of his Lancers. But now he's going to be moving forward to try and pick a fight with the my very healthy Umbar forces at this point. Both of our armies haven't really been tested all that much. But of course, the advance of the Cardolan forces is going to oblige me to bring back some of my cavalry, and I believe my Warlords of Umbar are going to be pulled out of this fight over here in the east, and I'm going to be forced to move them back there to support my army against the advance of Arthedain. Over here, though, things are just a mess. Just a complete nightmare. Dead people everywhere. Charge there from the Arthedain sergeants, looking like they want to get a piece of, not too sure what, actually. I see. They're going for the Riders of the Fold, who are getting shot in the rear. That charge from the rear might be enough to shatter that Rohirrim cavalry. Oh, and it looks like they are going to be able to disengage, but they have taken really heavy losses. They're going to move forward towards the Variag mercenaries. Get a nice charge there. Probably cut down a fair amount of the mercenaries, but the Arthedain cav is very close behind. A rear charge there going to be enough to potentially break these Rohirrim. Rhun rules being very careful to get them out of there and just maximize the uptime of these Riders of the Fold, but they are now wavering, surrounded on all sides. I don't think we're going to see these guys stick around for too much longer. A lot of skirmish fire being poured over here into the Eastmark Horse Archers. A lot of the Rohirrim have really been cut down at this point, and there's only so many of them left. Over here, Minas Garitlan swordsmen, even with the presence of Dunedain commanders, definitely in danger of routing. Now the Dunedain commanders have been pulled away. Perhaps the Easterlings are going to have the opportunity to rout this pocket of Arthedain forces, but let's move on over to my end of the battle, where things have really gotten heavy. Now, the Arthedain forces have committed everything that they have to this uphill assault, but I had a couple units of cavalry that were lying in wait for just such an eventuality. Now I'm springing them into action. Mounted Numenorians charging into the rear of the pikemen. Unfortunately, I left them in there a little bit too long, although I am going to have some spearmen be able to move in on the flank and surround these guys. I'm going to pull my my mounted Numenorians out of there as quickly as possible. Now, in the back over on this end, I kept a unit of mercenary cavalry in reserve, and I used them to fight the Royal Court of House Amlaith, just to try and keep them busy and inflict some decent casualties on them. But my mercenary cav are actually taking a beating in this fight. thanks to the 2 HP and the high stats of the Royal Court of Amleth. However, these guys are a lot cheaper than this Lancer unit, so it does end up being a reasonably good trade on my end. And it does, of course, leave my Mounted Numenorean Shield Guard free to disrupt the Arthedain skirmish line. And now my archers aren't quite as good as the Arthedain ones, but they do have a lot of survivability with their heavier armor and, of course, their 3 shield values. So now they're going to be focusing fire down these Arthedain marksmen and relatively at ease when it comes to the return fire. You can see that they haven't really managed to do a ton of damage to my Belgier archers so far. Now Rohan going to spring into action here with all of his infantry forces. Looks like 3 units here of the Rittermark Spearmen and a couple units of the Eowyn Shield Maidens going to be moving in. And this is going to be it for Arthedain. You can see he was actually beating me on the line here, despite the hill advantage that that is conferred to my Umbar forces. Arthedain doing very well on the line against these Corsair warriors. However, with the timely arrival of Rules, a beautiful volley there from those throwing axes into the Illuminas Gate Guards and into the pikes in the center, where Arthedain is winning the heaviest. That's going to be enough to even out the struggle. You can see those Arthedain forces really taking a beating here. Over on this end, the Royal Court of Amleth have finally managed to disengage themselves from my mercenary cavalry. I've brought in some reinforcements as well. Some of my mercenary cav, I believe, from the other ends have joined the fray, and of course my lancers are doing a lot of damage to these Arthedain marksmen. And the Arthedain forces have just really not been able to leverage their skirmishers, their excellent skirmishers, in fact, very much in this battle, thanks to the disruption first from my cavalry and now from the intervention of my ally Rules. Yeah, Arthedain really taking a beating here, being sandwiched between my cavalry and the infantry of my ally Rules, and the Royal Court of House Amleth trying to hold the Arthedain marksmen together, but they're going to swiftly find themselves overrun. So now that things are well in control, I'm going to pull out my Mounted Numenoreans and charge them into the rear of these dismounted Dunedain Knights to try and even out that particular fight, and that is going to be devastating for those Dunedain Knights. Well over half the unit are going to fall there in a single charge, and I'm going to pull them back down to try and tie up these Royal Court of House Amleth, who I know are going to be getting low on HP at this point. They are definitely ripe to be surrounded and destroyed. So I'm going to come in again with some of my mercenary cavalry, try and deal with this final high-tier asset of the Arthedain line. And it looks like the Easterlings just got their general cut down by the remaining thieves of Tharbad. And over on this end, let's take a quick look at how things have shaped up between my allies and the Men of the South. Hasn't really turned out great for anybody. I don't think that Cardolan has a ton of his forces still left over. Some of the Easterling mercenaries here fighting against my Aberzaning Nardu Tariq, who are going to break these guys apart. Still some Dunedain commanders here from Pope Fluffy Duck, who I'm sure have been running hammer and anvil strikes into the rear of those archers and have just generally been making a nuisance of themselves. 3 Southron pikemen, however, barreling down on them. Really easy to lose track of a small unit like this in the forest, so they might get themselves skewered. However, Pope Fluffy Duck's going to keep these guys moving, and I think he's going to go for maybe some remaining skirmishers, but there's not really a lot left from either side. Still some Hashari Stalkers, however, who have now joined the fray. Still have some ammunition. They're going to be putting some fire into my Aberzaning Nardu Tariq from the rear, and at the same time, a unit of Hashari still on the field, charging in to my Aberzaning Nardu Tariq on the flank, just as they managed to break one of those units of Variag mercenaries. Still another unit here yet to come, and looks like they were getting hammered and anviled by the Dunedain commanders. It might be enough to break them, and it is, indeed. This is basically the end of the battle on this end of the field. Looks like some of the Minotaur Roman Guardians have reformed. They're now moving towards the fight over here against Arthedain. Arthedain is really looking ragged at this point. Their line greatly thinned out, thanks to my allies and some hammer and anvil strikes from my cavalry. We hear the Arthedain pikemen on the verge of breaking. Now, I went for very much of an oblique formation. In this particular battle, I really stacked one of my wings because I wanted to break the Arthedain forces and begin to roll up their line, which would not have actually worked out for me if it wasn't for the intervention of my allies, but now I do have a very heavy concentration of troops here on this wing, and I'm going to be able to just roll up the remaining pockets of Arthedain infantry here, and a lot of them are thinking about routing. Numinos Gate Guards fleeing, and there goes some of the Arthedain men-at-arms, and that is going to cause a chain rout here that's going to break apart most of what remains of the Arthedain line. Over on this end, it looks like... I'm not too sure what happened here. Maybe so there was some cavalry or some of the Easter, looks like some of the Loknar Rim moved in to try and support their ally Arthedain, but unfortunately got themselves torn apart. Had some, looks like some Dragon's Wrath Guildsmen here as well. There's still one of them remaining. Unfortunately, they were surrounded and destroyed by my allies' infantry, and I think I had some Warlords of Umbar over here as well, crashing into the rear of them. And now the Arthedain forces have been broken to pieces, and they are fleeing in all directions in a great panic. And that is basically the end of the battle. So let's go ahead and let's fast forward things just a little bit here. I think there might be some fighting still left on this end of the field. Some of the Hashari looking like they're going to be fighting to the death. And there goes the Arthedain general as well. So that's going to send any remaining Arthedain forces with the stomach to fight into a panic, and they're going to flee off the field. And we hear the Hashari Stalkers still putting up a fight, surprisingly, despite being hopelessly outnumbered. Let's go ahead and let's fast forward through the end here. Looks like some remaining Rohirrim cavalry helping us clean up all that remains of the men of the East on this side of the field. Now let's just take a quick look here at the mess that we made. This is a very chaotic battle that really forced all the players to kind of play different parts of the field, which is why I was really excited to show it to you. Over here we've got some Easterlings still ready to fight. Easteron warriors taking a charge from my Mountain Numenorian Shield Guard, and they're of course being peppered down here by the remaining skirmish forces, I believe, from Cardolan. Still got some Dunedain Rangers as well. And this is the kind of situation where those types of units, the Rangers, are going to be extremely useful. Frontal charge here by the 1st Marshal's Bodyguard. Ooh, that's going to be ugly. Yeah, I see some of the Sons of Eorl getting absolutely butchered by the Halberds and their long pike bonus. However, the Sons of Eorl definitely going to be able to bring it back. And the arrival of some of the Rohirrim infantry, 2 units of Shield Maidens, is going to be enough to make the rest of the Easterlings panic and flee. But as I was saying, it was very chaotic and very all over the place. And I don't really get too many battles like this where you're playing in this kind of claustrophobic maze of trees and it's hard to tell what's going on in any given part of the battle. It's a ton of fun to play, and it's really a lot of fun to commentate. But in any case, let's take a look at some of the kills here. My ally, Fluffy Duck, getting the most kills in the game. Looks like the forces of Rhun on the other end, and Harad as well, kind of struggled a little bit. Mostly that was due to the intervention of Rohan, for sure. Rohan did an excellent job at using his cavalry to great effect to support his ally, and especially his skirmishers. The skirmishers really seemed to be exactly where they needed to be at any given moment in order to leverage their high volume of fire. And yeah, cut basically a bloody swath through the forces of the Easterlings and the Southrons. But I gotta say, Revan of Korriban and WK definitely made the most out of a tough situation, and yeah, they put up a great fight. Brainy Smurf, I think he waited a little bit too long. I can see the strategy that he was going for, but I think he waited too long to move his cavalry over to support his allies, whereas I was able to do that not just because of proximity, but because I was willing to move my units over there early on in the game. I was able to support my allies early on and basically throughout the entire game. However, Brady Smurf was a little bit too passive, I think, and yeah, it basically cost him a lot of problems. Now, if he had moved in a little bit earlier and had begun to fight me at a point in the battle where my allies weren't able to support me, then it might have been a very different story. He was, I think, going to beat me if I didn't have a little bit of support there from Rules a little bit later in the battle. So I can see what he was going for, but I don't think that it ended up being worth it in this particular battle. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and there are going to be a ton of replays coming out in the next little while. I have so many that I want to show you. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye!